My father looked down at me in the hospital bed, his face twisted in disgust. "Don't ever come back," he whispered, his voice cold and final. "We're done." Behind him, my stepmother smirked, adjusting her designer sunglasses. He had finally gotten exactly what she wanted. They turned around and walked out, leaving a 14-year-old girl completely alone in a cold, sterile room with nothing but an empty wallet and a broken heart. The heavy door clicked shut. The lock snapped into place. I lay trapped in the freezing emergency ward of Charlotte Memorial, clutching the thin sheets while my lungs burned. Every breath rattled, sharp and shallow, a brutal physical reminder of the severe asthma attack that had just suffocated me on our living room floor. The hospital monitors kept a steady, mechanical rhythm while my entire world shattered. My own father had just legally abandoned me. Everyone thought it was the end of my story. They thought I would become just another statistic. But 2 hours later, the hospital called him back. When the head nurse walked into my room to check my vitals, she stopped dead in her tracks. Her clipboard clattered to the floor, and her hands started violently trembling as she stared at the man sitting quietly by my bedside. "You," she choked out. "It can't be you." Today, at 27, I run a philanthropy foundation right here in Charlotte. The city's elite call me Coral, the woman who fixes broken systems and funds hospital wings. But 13 years ago, I was just a terrified kid, choking on my own breath while the two people supposed to protect me plotted my permanent exile. My stepmother, Morgan, was drowning. She played the perfect, wealthy housewife for my father, Trevor. Behind the manicures and country club lunches, she hid $150,000 in illegal gambling debts. The collectors were circling. Her solution sat locked inside my bedroom drawer, my late mother's diamond heirloom necklace, worth $250,000. Morgan plotted the theft perfectly. She also waited for the absolute perfect moment to destroy me. That Tuesday afternoon, the Carolina pollen count spiked. My chest tightened into a familiar, suffocating knot. I collapsed on the living room rug, gasping, clawing at my throat. My inhaler was gone. Morgan had cleared it from the kitchen counter. Instead of calling an ambulance, she walked over to my school backpack, unzipped it, and dramatically pulled out the empty velvet jewelry box. She crouched down next to me, my vision blurred. My lungs screamed for oxygen. She leaned in so close I could smell her heavy, floral perfume. "He doesn't want you," she whispered, her voice laced with absolute venom. "You're just a ghost from a dead wife." The front door swung open. Trevor stepped into the foyer. In a fraction of a second, Morgan's face shifted. The sweet, loving mask snapped on. She let out a hysterical, gut-wrenching sob, waving the empty velvet box in the air. She buried her face in her hands, wailing about my betrayal, screaming that I had stolen the family treasure to hurt her. Trevor rushed into the room. He ignored my blue lips. He stepped right over me as I writhed on his expensive hardwood floor. He saw his weeping young wife and his own bruised ego, and his choice was instant. He dragged me out to the car by my arm, treating my severe medical emergency like an embarrassing inconvenience. Once we reached the emergency room, the cruelty shifted from physical neglect to calculated isolation. While I slipped in and out of consciousness under a plastic oxygen mask, Trevor cornered the ER staff. He ordered the nurses to pull me off his premium insurance. He reached into my jacket, pulled out my cell phone, and manually blocked every single contact in my directory. My aunts, my uncles, anyone who might come looking for me. He built a digital fortress around his perfect new life, leaving me completely stranded on the outside. He stood right outside my door and told the staff I was a pathological liar and a thief. He demanded they dump me into state care by morning. They broke me in that freezing hospital room, They stripped away my family, my safety, and my voice. But today, standing at the top of an empire that controls the very ground Trevor used to walk on, I know the truth. They tried to bury a frightened kid. They actually planted a seed that would grow up to destroy them. The clipboard hit the linoleum floor. The loud clatter echoed off the sterile walls. Nurse Page stood frozen, her face drained of all color, staring at the elderly man sitting perfectly still beside my bed. Spencer kept his voice terrifyingly low. He held my gaze the entire time. He just issued a command that shifted the gravity in the room. "Use my private line," he told her, his tone dropping to a freezing temperature. "Call her father's corporate office. Tell him if he is not standing in this room within the next 45 minutes. His commercial credit line will be entirely frozen by tomorrow morning. Child Protective Services will meet him at his front door with a warrant for criminal abandonment." Paige scrambled out of the room. She bypassed every hospital protocol. The threat of absolute financial ruin worked faster than any medical emergency ever could. 30 minutes later, the heavy wooden door swung open again. Trevor marched inside, his face flushed with extreme irritation. Morgan trailed right behind him, her designer heels clicking sharply against the tile. They looked at the hospital bed like a nuisance they had already swatted away. They fully expected to bully a tired social worker into taking out the trash. "What is the meaning of this?" Trevor demanded. He pointed a firm finger toward the empty hallway. "We made our position perfectly clear. She is a thief. We expect this hospital to arrange for state care immediately." Morgan crossed her arms and nodded enthusiastically. "We cannot have a liar disrupting our household. We are signing the release forms, and we are done." They completely missed the figure sitting in the shadowed corner. Spencer stood up. He stepped into the harsh fluorescent light, and the arrogant anger instantly melted off Trevor's face. His jaw dropped. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He recognized the man who funded his business expansion and held the lease on his corporate headquarters. "Ah, so you do recognize me," Spencer said. His voice sliced through the tension like a blade. "I was just learning about your definition of family responsibility." Trevor stammered, taking a panicked step backward. Morgan tried to step up, her voice rising in a desperate attempt to maintain control. She started spinning the lie all over again, calling me a thief, claiming she had to protect herself. Spencer silenced her with a single, piercing look. He reached into his tailored suit jacket, pulled out his phone, and slid it directly across my bedside tray table. The screen glared up at them. Crystal clear forensic security footage from the downtown jewelry exchange played on a loop. Morgan stood at the pawn counter, trading my mother's diamond necklace for thick stacks of cash. The timestamp confirmed it happened 3 days ago. The silence in the room became absolute. Trevor stared at the screen. A visible tremor ran down his spine. The sweat beaded along his hairline as the reality of the situation crashed down on his arrogant shoulders. Spencer stepped closer. His shadow loomed over both of them. "You abandoned your dying child to protect a thief," Spencer stated. The words landed like heavy stones. "You have 2 choices. Option 1, I call the authorities. You will both be arrested for grand larceny, wire fraud, and criminal child abandonment right here in this room. I will personally ensure your business line is completely frozen by morning. You will be bankrupt within a week." Spencer snapped his fingers. A hospital lawyer stepped through the doorway, holding a thick stack of custody transfer documents. "Or option 2, Spencer continued. You sign these termination papers. You legally surrender all parental rights and custody to my private foundation. You walk away permanently, and you never attempt to contact her again. Decide. Right now." Trevor looked at the stark legal documents. He looked at the undeniable proof of his new wife's massive crime. Then, he looked at me, lying there with the oxygen mask still strapped to my face. My own father possessed a choice to fight for me, to beg for forgiveness, to demand the truth from Morgan. Instead, his utter cowardice kicked in. He snatched the pen from the lawyer's hand. His fingers trembled violently against the paper, but he signed every single page, officially and legally cutting himself out of my life forever. He traded his only daughter for a clean corporate record. He tossed the pen onto my bed, grabbed Morgan by the arm, and fled the room without looking back. 13 years passed. I stood in the center of the grand ballroom at the Charlotte Ritz, 27 years old and directing Spencer's billion-dollar philanthropy foundation. The city's elite surrounded me, mayors, bank executives, and hospital board members clinked crystal glasses and wrote massive donation checks to fund our new pediatric wing. Trevor's life had taken a drastically different path. His logistics business collapsed into total bankruptcy exactly 12 months after Spencer pulled his financial backing. Morgan bled his final checking accounts dry, packed her bags, and vanished across state lines before the foreclosure signs hit the front lawn. He lost his empire. I built mine. The heavy ballroom doors crashed open. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Murmurs rippled through the crowd of hundreds. Trevor stumbled into the center of the gala. His tailored Italian suits were long gone, replaced by a cheap, wrinkled blazer that hung loose on his shrinking frame. He shoved past a waiter, marched straight to the main podium, and grabbed the microphone. He aimed to weaponize the public space. He bet everything on the societal pressure of a charity gala, assuming a polite, professional woman would pay absolutely any price to avoid a massive public scandal. He forced a pathetic, trembling sob into the microphone. "My daughter," he cried out, his voice echoing off the walls. "Coral abandoned me." He wiped a fake tear from his cheek, scanning the wealthy crowd. "I lost my business. I lost my home. I made mistakes. But she completely cut me out of her life. She left me on the streets to starve while she drinks champagne. I just want my little girl back." He played the heartbroken, reformed father to absolute perfection. He expected me to panic. He expected me to pull him into a private hallway, hand him a check with 5 zeros, and beg him to keep quiet. He thought I was still that suffocating teenager in the ER, willing to do anything for a scrap of his affection. He thought time had softened my memory. You never forget the sound of a door clicking shut when you are fighting for your life. They broke me then. But today, I hold the hammer. I set my glass on the nearest table. I stepped directly into the center of the room, stopping exactly 3 feet away from him. I held his gaze. I raised my right hand and gave a single, sharp nod to the sound engineer up in the second-floor AV booth. The massive presentation screen behind Trevor flared to life, right in the middle of his victim speech. His weeping face was entirely eclipsed by a 20-foot-tall projection of the legal custody termination document. His rigid, cowardly signature stretched across the wall for every single donor in Charlotte to see. Then, the speakers cracked. The audio ripped through the dead-silent ballroom, pulled directly from the hospital security footage on that freezing Tuesday afternoon 13 years ago. "She is a pathological liar." Trevor's own voice boomed through the high-definition sound system, dripping with venom and absolute disgust. "Dump her in state care. We are done." The silence in the ballroom became suffocating. The elite donors gasped in sheer horror. Women covered their mouths. The bank executives who used to fund his empire narrowed their eyes in utter contempt. The hospital board members recognized the exact ER wing displayed on the documents. The collective judgment of the entire room crushed him instantly. Trevor spun around to face the screen. The blood drained completely from his face, leaving his skin a sickly, pale gray. His jaw slackened. The microphone slipped from his trembling fingers, hitting the polished floor with a deafening, high-pitched screech. His chest heaved with pure, unadulterated panic. The audio looped. "We are done." It echoed a second time, cementing his guilt. Trevor's knees buckled slightly. He reached out to grab the podium for support, his knuckles turning stark white. Sweat poured down the sides of his face, soaking into the cheap collar of his shirt. He opened his mouth to speak, to spin a new lie, but his vocal cords simply failed. His eyes darted frantically across the crowd, searching the disgusted faces for an ounce of pity. He found absolute disgust. He brought his lies to my stage, and I buried him with the truth. I bent down and picked up the microphone from the polished floor. The feedback hummed quietly in my hand. I stared straight into Trevor's terrified, bloodshot eyes. "You wanted state care, Trevor." My voice echoed through the massive ballroom, sharp and completely steady. "Security will escort you to the curb." Two broad-shouldered guards stepped out from the shadows of the velvet curtains. They clamped their hands firmly onto his arms. Trevor's legs gave out completely. He dragged his feet across the floor, stammering incoherent excuses, begging the donors for a sliver of grace. Nobody moved a single inch. The city's most powerful people simply sipped their champagne and watched the absolute ruin of a coward. The heavy brass doors pushed open. The guards tossed him out onto the slick pavement. The freezing Carolina rain washed away whatever pathetic dignity he possessed. That was the absolute end of his bloodline privilege. He walked into my world hoping to extract a fortune, and he left with a permanent public execution. His precious wife, Morgan, met an equally fitting end. She never found her next wealthy mark. After draining Trevor's last remaining accounts all those years ago, she fled across state lines to avoid the incoming wire fraud investigations. Her illegal gambling debts caught up to her. Today, she bounces between cheap motels in Nevada, perpetually running from aggressive debt collectors, jumping in terror at every single knock on her hollow door. She traded a $250,000 heirloom for a life of constant, suffocating paranoia. Every player on that Tuesday afternoon got exactly what they earned. Hours later, the gala ended. The catering crew cleared the crystal glasses. The string quartet packed their heavy instruments. I stood completely alone in the massive, quiet ballroom. The overhead lights dimmed down to a soft, golden hum. I pulled my phone from my clutch. The screen illuminated the dark room. Trevor had managed to slip a voicemail onto my private line right before his ambush. A tiny red notification badge waited for my attention. A pathetic, weeping plea from a broken old man. My thumb hovered over the glass. I swiped left. The delete icon flashed bright red. I pressed it. The notification vanished. I blocked the newly acquired number. The screen went pitch black. The suffocating weight I carried in my chest for 13 long years instantly evaporated into the empty air. I inhaled deeply. My lungs expanded, full and entirely clear. I turned around and walked out of the building. I was completely, undeniably free. The Monday morning following the charity gala, Trevor's ambush solidified into strict legal boundaries. Our foundation's corporate attorneys moved with lethal efficiency. They filed a comprehensive civil suit for criminal trespassing, harassment, and attempted extortion. 2 months later, we sat inside a sprawling mahogany courtroom. The county judge took exactly one look at the certified hospital security transcripts and the high-definition gala footage. The heavy wooden gavel slammed down. The court sentenced Trevor to a permanent 500-yard restraining order and mandated $25,000 in punitive damages. That final penalty completely bankrupted his last remaining shell account. The social execution proved absolute. The elite donors who witnessed his pathetic stunt completely blacklisted his name across the entire state. Country club administrators publicly revoked his legacy membership. Former business partners crossed the street when they saw him walking down the pavement. He became an untouchable pariah in the very city he once tried to conquer. 6 months later, a cheap, yellow envelope arrived at the foundation's front desk. It carried no return address. Just my name scrawled in Trevor's frantic, shaking handwriting. I sliced the paper open. The single page reeked of stale cigarette smoke and sheer desperation. He spun the exact same tired narrative, blaming his horrific choices entirely on Morgan's manipulation. He claimed he acted under her spell. He ended the letter demanding a second chance, stating he was still my father and faced immediate eviction from his studio apartment. A decade ago, reading those words would trigger a violent panic attack. Today, my pulse remained perfectly steady. I read the scribbled ink. Indifference serves as the true opposite of love. I folded the yellow paper in half, dropped it directly into the mechanical shredder beside my desk, and walked into my 10 o'clock board meeting. The chaos of my past dissolved completely. Later that year, I sat at the head of a massive oak dining table inside Spencer's sprawling estate for our annual Thanksgiving dinner. The room glowed with warm, golden light. It radiated a profound safety I never once experienced inside Trevor's paranoid, status-obsessed house. My chosen family surrounded me. Spencer sat to my right, offering a quiet, deeply proud smile. The brilliant foundation directors who stood by me, the mentors who guided my career. They all filled the room with loud, authentic laughter. We passed plates of roasted turkey and warm artisan bread, celebrating our collective victories. We share zero genetics, but we share an unbreakable foundation of fierce loyalty. Look closely at the people standing by your side right now. The greatest danger in your life rarely comes from the obvious villain. The truest danger always comes from the cowardly enabler. Narcissists like Morgan are completely predictable. They operate on pure greed and ego. Enablers like Trevor operate like an insidious disease. They masquerade as your protector while actively handing the enemy the ammunition required to destroy you. They watch you drown, complain about the splashing, and then demand you apologize to the person holding your head underwater. Surviving that kind of profound betrayal requires a complete rewiring of your mind. I learned 3 brutal, life-saving rules. Write these down. Rule number 1. The bloodline fallacy. Biology serves as nothing more than a biological introduction. Loyalty, fierce protection, and consistent action forge a real family. You owe absolutely nothing to a hollow title. Cut the cord. Rule number 2. The power of receipts. Abusers rely on the polite silence of their victims. When cornered by a narcissist in a public space, do not lower your voice. Project the absolute truth. Weaponize your history. Let their own documented cruelty destroy their carefully crafted reputation. Shatter their shield with undeniable receipts. Rule number 3. The ultimate vengeance is radical independence. You do not win by screaming at your abusers. You win by building a life so massive, so secure, and so incredibly successful that their pathetic attempts to re-enter it look like an absolute joke. Massive success operates as the ultimate repellent for toxic people. Has your past ever crashed into your present like Trevor did? If the person who broke you suddenly stood in front of you today, begging for a handout, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell me the exact city you are watching from, so I can see how far this story of survival has reached. I am Coral, and I am completely free.